People always tell me that I should have a you break it, you buy it policy in my art booth. So if someone damages my art, I need to make them pay for it. Now, in theory, this sounds like a wonderful idea, but in reality, it doesn't go over so well. Sometimes people pay, albeit begrudgingly, but other times they refuse, and sometimes they get flat out angry. And then it's like, what are you supposed to do? How do you deal with that? In hopes that I can crowdsource this a bit and maybe avoid some of these situations in the future, I'm going to share 3 of the most memorable times that I had to deal with difficult customers in a manner like this in this video. So there was this one time, it was at an art fair that was also part of a music festival, and a woman came into my booth. She was shopping through all of my prints, and she kept taking prints out because she wanted to save them because she was looking for several to potentially purchase. She kept setting them on the side on the corner of the print bin, and I had to go over and tell her, like, look, if you set these here, oftentimes the wind, because we're at an outdoor event, right, the wind will come up and they'll fly off, or maybe another customer, like a kid, will come in and knock them off. And if they hit the concrete that's beneath us, the corners of the prints get really dinged up, and then nobody wants to buy them after that. Now, right at that moment, I didn't concisely say, hey, if you mess these up, you're going to have to pay for them. But I think that it was understood in the way that I was explaining it. And so she said, okay, no worries, I'll keep track of them, I'll hold them in my hand. And I often have to tell customers this, and usually they hold them in their hands and it's just fine. But then I had other customers coming in and I wasn't quite paying as much attention, so I couldn't go over and remind her to not set them on the corner again when she did it the next time, because she kept doing it. And then inevitably, like I said would happen, the prints fall off. She had a stack of 3 of them sitting there, and she was looking for a 4th one because she was going to do my buy 3, get your 4th print free deal that I always offer in my booth. But so she dropped the prints and they got really dinged up. Not only that, but they got dirty and stuff because the ground was like gross. It was an outdoor music festival. We were on cement where our booth was, but the ground outside was just really gross and muddy and stuff. And so not only did they get dinged corners, but they had dirt all over them. Now I could wipe it off, but the corners, I couldn't fix that. So when I picked them up and I said, hey, well, good thing you were going to purchase these anyway, because she'd been holding them aside for a while and she was just looking for that free one. I said, because, you know, now that you messed them up, like, you're going to need to buy those. And then before she could say anything, I quickly followed it up by, hey, well, the white area on the outside of them isn't what's going to show in your frame anyway. It's the print on the inside. And that's why I create a little buffer zone on there so that if you do drop them or they get dinged up, you can still frame them and they'll still look good. So that way it was reassuring to her that she wasn't going to have to buy something that was damaged that she wouldn't be able to enjoy later when hanging on her wall. Then immediately she got a big attitude with me, and she's like, well, I'm not buying those. I didn't want those to begin with. And she yanked them out of my hand and threw them really hard into the print bin. And you'd think at this point that she would then storm out of the booth and leave, because that's what most customers do in a similar situation. But no, she decided to continue to look through my prints, to act like she wants to buy something, and then she started to grab some out. And I was like, no, if you're not going to buy those, you're not going to buy anything in here. I was thinking to myself, seriously? So I went over and I picked up the prints that she had thrown into the bin, the ones that were damaged. And I said, no, ma'am, you need to pay for these because these are the ones that you damaged. You can pick out your free ones still, but these are the ones that you need to purchase. So then she looks over at my husband, who was assisting me in my booth, and looks at him like, are you going to make me pay? What are you going to do about it? And he sits there and he just kind of looks at me like, I don't know how to handle this situation. And I was looking back at him like I didn't know what to do. But I didn't let it show. I wasn't seeming scared or nervous by this person or anything like that. I said, ma'am, you need to pay for these. I can ring you up. And then she got really angry. And again, she said, well, I don't want those. I want something else. And so she started to go through my print bin again. And it's like, what does she think she's doing? I'm not going to let her continue to ruin my work. And so at that point, I said, look, you just have to leave my booth. She was probably doing this as a tactic to get out of paying for the prints by acting like she wanted to buy something else in my booth. But yeah, I just had to eventually kick her out. And she got even more and more belligerent as I was telling her to leave. And the crazy thing is, later on the next day, I saw her standing out in front of my booth, like away from the booth, not trying to come in, but she was looking in longingly, like she really wanted some of my art. It's just so messed up, because if she would have listened to me to begin with, not damaged my work, and then when she damaged it, just been willing to pay for it because it wasn't going to be ruined when it was hanging on her wall, but I don't know, she just didn't want to comply, didn't want to buy something that she had damaged. She didn't want to be cooperating with me at all. And so yeah, maybe I didn't handle the situation right. I just really don't know. It's hard to read people. So yeah, I would love your opinion on this. If there is a better way I could have handled that or any of the rest of these interactions, please share it in the comments. Now, this next situation is a similar thing. A woman was shopping in my booth and she had a handful of prints and she dropped them. So there were several of them damaged. And I would like to say that if a person just damages one, typically I let them get by with it, especially if it's a small child. I do say something to them like, hey, I can't sell these very well once you damage them, so that way they won't damage any more. But when a person damages several, that's a whole nother level of consequences in my mind. So that's why I try to make them pay. But in this situation, just like the one previously, the woman did not want to pay. And usually people don't want to pay for what they damage. But in this case, she was like, well, don't worry about it. You can just make another one. It's just a print. It's not an original. You can just print out another one. Just make another one. And I kept saying, well, but you damaged these ones and they cost me money. And she's like, well, just make another one. You can make another one. And she was saying all this, smiling, not seeming angry, but just sort of antagonistically saying it, like, well, just make another one. No big deal. You're an artist. And this time I was in the booth myself. I didn't have an assistant there to try to back me up or anything. So what was I supposed to do? Eventually she just left and I really couldn't make her pay because every time I said you need to pay for these, she would just respond with, well, just make another one. It's no big deal. And eventually after saying that like half a dozen times, it was like, look, I'm getting nowhere with this. And so I just took them and stuck the prints behind my counter because I couldn't sell them, and tried to put on a smile for the next people who came in my booth. This next story is a little bit different. So we were at the end of a show. It was very hot outside. So I had the outdoor flap, the outside of my booth down where the sun was coming in, just to provide shade in the booth because it was so hot. But just suffice it to say that I had a full wall of art hanging on the outside of the booth, but the outside was down so people couldn't see that it was there. And it was the end of the show, and obviously there was a teenager that did not want to leave, because you could hear him yelling at his parents from several booths away. Like we were inside the booth and we could hear this kid yelling and being angry. And I saw the parents walking in front of my booth and then some small kids trailing behind. And the parents were kind of talking back to them. You could tell they were together because they were being very loud. And the parents were like, no, come on, let's go. We've got to leave. We've got to leave. And the kid was just angry. So when he gets by my booth, I guess he decides that he needs to act out and throw a half full water bottle, which is fairly heavy, as hard as he can, like a quarterback football throw hard against the side of my booth, the side that had all the artwork hanging on it underneath the outside. And I was freaking out immediately because I'm like, seriously, I had some original paintings out there. What is this going to do to them? What if the bottle cap area had hit it really hard? Did it dent them? Did it scratch them underneath my outside flap? Like, what damage did I incur here? So I leap up out of my chair, and as I'm running around to check the outside of the booth, I say, hey, you guys better come back because something could have been damaged by that water bottle. You have to stop, wait, don't leave, because if this is damaged, you're paying for it. It was a really awkward situation because the only person who stayed behind out of the entire family was a kid about the age of 5. She was so sweet and super nice. She's like, hey guys, this artist says we might have damaged some of her stuff and like we need to stay here to fix the situation. So she's waiting and she's sitting there, and I'm feeling bad because this poor girl isn't responsible for this. And since the family was leaving so quickly, I didn't feel like I had time to roll up the flap, so I crawled kind of behind it, underneath it, in between the outside flap and my art to be able to kind of check everything really quickly. And by the time I emerged, the girl was gone, the family was nowhere to be seen. Luckily, my artwork survived, nothing got damaged. I think one of the pieces had a little bit of more of a sagginess to the canvas, but I was easily able to just put water on the back of the canvas and it tightened right up. And so everything was fine. But this is just another example of people coming into my booth or even just walking past my booth and having zero consideration for me as an artist, and that this is how I make my living. They are just thinking of themselves. I honestly don't know how to navigate this very well. I try to make people pay because I know having a you break it, you buy it policy is a good thing. But if they don't want to pay, or they get angry about it, or they just blaze out and leave your booth, leave you in the lurch, what are you supposed to do? I mean, I know I could post signs in my booth that say, you break it, you buy it, but I already have other signs around my booth that say no food or drinks, and other signs that say no photographs on the outside of my booth. At a certain point, how many rules can I post on the outside of my booth? I mean, people don't read the rules I have there right now. So do you think a rule on the outside of the booth is ever going to make, like, for example, that kid with the water bottle who threw it at the booth and the parents had already left and were telling the kid to come? Do you think that's going to make them pay? No. And so I don't really know what to do to rectify the situation other than, if I do have damage in my booth, be aware that I'm just going to eat the cost of it. And that's just the reality of selling work among the public in outdoor situations like art fairs. So yeah, what would you do in this situation? Is there a way that I could have handled it better? And if you'd like to hear some more of my art fair drama stories, I have another one that you might be really interested in. It is where people complain about my price sign at an art fair. You can check it out here. All right, thank you so much for watching. See you next time.